If you like our short stories, please like, comment, and subscribe for more. Joren Bellamy had crafted wands for over 20 years, but this one, the one resting in his hands now, should not exist. It was heavy, impossibly so, as though the weight of something unseen pressed down on it. The wood was blackened, not burned, but darkened as if time itself had aged it beyond recognition. When he ran his fingers along the handle, it felt almost like stone, smooth yet ancient. Something about it made his stomach churn. The wand had no core, no dragon heartstring, no phoenix feather, no essence of anything magical. It was hollow, yet it thrummed with an eerie pulse like a heartbeat deep within the wood. Joren had seen every kind of wand in his lifetime, crafted thousands of them with his own hands. He could feel magic within a wand as naturally as he felt warmth from a flame, an instinct honed by years of dedication. This wand, however, was wrong. Not just unfamiliar, but fundamentally unnatural. He had tried everything. He had held it under moonlight, tested it with a dozen spellcasters, even attempted to break it, yet no matter what he did, the wand refused to bond with anyone. No sparks, no reaction, nothing. Until tonight. Joren stood alone in his workshop, candlelight flickering across shelves stacked with elegant wands, each carefully labelled, waiting for the right witch or wizard to claim them. But this wand, this cursed thing, was an abomination. It did not belong. His hands trembled as he lifted it. He had never dared to cast a spell with it before. He didn't know why. Fear, perhaps, or something deeper. Some instinct warning him that this was not just a wand. It was something else entirely. He took a breath, raised the wand, and whispered a simple incantation. A spell to summon a breeze, harmless, the first spell every child learned. The moment the words left his lips, the candlelight vanished. Darkness swallowed the room whole. Joren's breath caught. His pulse pounded in his ears. He tried to move, to step back, to drop the wand, anything, but his body refused to obey. The air around him grew thick, suffocating, as if unseen hands pressed against his throat. Then a bonwang sounded so ancient, curling around his mind like smoke. You were never meant to destroy me. A shape stirred in the darkness. A shadow, shifting, stretching, unfurling from the wand like ink spreading through water. Joren tried to scream, but no sound came. Memories that were not his own slammed into him. He saw a great hall, torches flickering against stone walls, hooded figures standing in a circle, a man bound in chains screaming, a voice, familiar yet unknown, echoing through the chamber. You will never erase me. Joren gasped as the vision shattered, his body collapsing against the work table. The candlelight flared back to life, chasing away the darkness. His hands were empty. The wand had fallen to the floor. For the first time in his life, Joren Bellamy felt true terror. He backed away from the workbench, his breath shallow. The workshop that had always been his sanctuary now felt claustrophobic, its shelves of wands pressing in around him. Each wand had been carefully crafted, matched to its owner with precision and skill. But the one on the floor, the one he had made with his own hands, had never belonged to anyone. It had always been waiting. His mind raced. He needed to understand what was happening. He had collected rare woods, enchanted cores, spoken to scholars and historians alike in his pursuit of perfect craftsmanship, yet no one had ever spoken of anything like this. He forced himself to step forward. His hands shook as he picked up the wand again, gripping it tighter. It felt warm now, as if something inside had stirred, stretching from a long slumber. Had he created this? No. No, he would have remembered. He would have known if he had carved something cursed, something that held a whispering soul within its grains. Wouldn't he? Joren needed answers. He set the wand down and moved quickly, grabbing his cloak from the hook by the door and shoving his arms through the sleeves. The archives of the Eldritch Library were his only hope. If any mention of a wand like this existed, it would be there, hidden in the oldest tomes, buried in pages long forgotten. The moment he turned toward the door, he felt it. A presence. Not in the room. Not something physical. Inside his mind. A second heartbeat beating with his own. His grip tightened on the door handle. He had been working too late, breathing in too much sawdust, exhausting himself with over-analysis. That had to be it. He wasn't losing control. He wasn't losing himself. He refused to believe otherwise. The door creaked as he stepped into the night air, the streets damp from the earlier rain. He pulled his cloak tighter around himself and made his way toward the one place that might hold the truth. He would find out what he had crafted. He would learn where the wood had come from. And then, no matter what it took, he would destroy it. Yet even as he strode through the darkened streets, the whisper returned, softer this time. "You have walked this path before." Joren clenched his jaw. He ignored it, but deep in his bones, something inside him knew. The whisper wasn't wrong. The Eldritch Library was silent at this hour, the only sound the faint crackle of enchanted lanterns hovering above the aisles. Joren moved swiftly through the arched halls, his boots echoing against polished stone. The library's scholars were bound by strict rules. No Wandmaker had ever been granted full access to its most sacred texts. Wandmakers were craftsmen after all, not scholars of deep magic. Their trade was respected, but it did not grant them the privilege of forbidden knowledge. Joren knew that. That was why he had spent years cultivating favor with the librarians, bartering rare materials, repairing ancient wands, earning their trust. Tonight, that trust would be tested. An old man sat behind the front desk, his face wrinkled with the weight of centuries. He looked up from his book as Joren approached. "I need everything you have on the Vethis Oak," Joren said, his voice low, steady. The librarian's expression did not change, but there was a shift in the air, a heaviness that had not been there a moment ago. "That name has not been spoken in a long time," the old man murmured. His gaze sharpened. "Where did you hear it?" Joren hesitated. If he told the truth, the librarian might refuse to help him, or worse, lock the archives away. But if he lied... "It's for a project." "That," he said finally. "A research request. A client brought me a wand of unknown origin. I need to verify the wood." The old man's eyes did not leave his. For a long, unbearable moment, neither of them spoke. Then the librarian exhaled, slow and tired. "Follow me." Joren let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The librarian led him through narrow corridors, lined with scrolls older than most civilizations. The deeper they went, the colder the air became, thick with the scent of aged parchment and ancient ink. They reached a door bound in iron, its surface etched with protective runes. The old man placed a withered hand on the lock. "You should not be here," he said softly. Then he twisted his fingers, and the lock clicked open. The door swung inward, revealing a room of forgotten knowledge. Scrolls and tomes lined the shelves, their bindings cracked with time. In the center of the room sat a single pedestal, holding a book bound in deep brown leather. So dark it was almost black. Joren stepped forward, drawn to it. The title had been burned from the cover long ago. "Everything we know about the Vethis Oak is in that book," the librarian said, watching him closely. "If you have found something made from its wood, I advise you to burn it before it burns you." Joren swallowed. "I just need to understand." The old man said nothing. He simply turned and left, shutting the door behind him. Joren opened the book. The pages crackled under his fingers, the ink faded but still legible. He read in silence, absorbing each word, each truth that chipped away at the foundation of what he thought he knew. The Vethis Oak had been unlike any other tree in existence. It did not grow in forests or groves. It grew only in places of great magic, feeding on power itself. It was said that the wood could hold souls within its grain, binding them in a way that neither life nor death could undo. Some had sought it for immortality. Others had tried to bury its existence. Joren's blood ran cold as he turned the page. A sketch of a man stared back at him. Sharp features, piercing eyes, Aradan Vale. Beneath the drawing, a name was scrawled in slashing ink, the script barely legible after centuries. Aradan had been one of the last wardens of lost magic, an order sworn to hide dangerous spells from the world. But he had betrayed them. He believed no magic should be buried. No spell should be forgotten. He had fought against his own kind, waged war against the very order he had once served. When he was finally defeated, the wardens had done something unheard of. They had bound his soul to the last Vethis Oak, not as a punishment, as a prison. Joren's hands shook as he read the final lines of the passage. "Beware the one who forgets. He has walked this path before." The room spun. The whisper from the wand slithered into his mind again, colder this time. "You were never meant to destroy me." Joren pressed his fingers against his temples. No, this was impossible. He had no connection to Aradan Vale. no connection to this ancient war. He was just a wandmaker, nothing more. He closed the book sharply, his breathing uneven. He had to leave. He had to. The candlelight flickered. Joren froze. Something else was in the room with him. A presence. A weight pressing against the air itself. The shadows in the corners of the archive deepened, shifting unnaturally. Joren stepped back, his heart hammering. The whisper came again, but this time it was not inside his head. This time it came from the shadows themselves. You remember now. The darkness twisted, pulling together into something almost human. A figure, indistinct yet unmistakably watching him, its form flickering like the dying light of a candle. Joren could not move. The figure tilted its head. How many times must we do this? The voice was wrong. It was layered, distant yet impossibly close. Joren forced himself to speak. What are you? The figure did not answer. Instead, it stepped forward. The candles in the room went out. For the first time in his life, Joren felt true fear. Joren could not move. The darkness pressed in around him, thick as smoke, suffocating, alive. The shadowed figure stepped closer, and though its form shifted like mist, its eyes, those eyes, were piercing, locked onto him as if they could see straight into his soul. You remember now, it whispered. The voice was layered, echoes folded within echoes, a sound that felt ancient and familiar all at once. Joren tried to speak, but his throat tightened, his breath caught between fear and something deeper, recognition. How many times must we do this? The words weren't a question. They were a statement. And then the memories came, not in glimpses, not in whispers, in a flood. Joren wasn't just remembering Aradan Vale's story, he was remembering his own. A great hall, torches casting long shadows against stone walls, hooded figures standing in a circle, the weight of a decision pressing down on him. Aradan kneeling before him, his hands bound in enchanted iron, his eyes defiant even in defeat. You will regret this, Aradan had said. And Joren, no, not just Joren, but the man he had been before, the man who had held the title of Warden of Lost Magic, had spoken the words that had sealed them both into this cycle. Your name will be erased, your power buried. You will never return. But Aradan had not been the only one sentenced that night. Joren had not just been Aradan's jailer. He had been his partner. He had been his betrayer. The knowledge crashed into him, unraveling the illusion of his life, stripping away the lie he had been living for centuries. He had walked this path before. He had made the same mistake before. And every time, the world had ensured he forgot, ensured that he lived in ignorance, ensured that he found the wand again, only to fail, again and again and again. Because the wand wasn't Aradan's prison. It was his. Joren staggered back, his breath ragged. His own hands trembled as he looked down at them, his skin unfamiliar, his body a stranger's shell. No, he gasped. No, this isn't possible. The shadow before him laughed. It was not a sound of malice, nor joy, nor cruelty. It was understanding. You have said that before, Aradan murmured. Every time, and yet, here we are. Joren's mind reeled. The wand. The cycle. The reason he had always felt drawn to it. The reason he had always failed to destroy it. Because it was bound to him. Every time he had tried to break it, it had simply waited for him to return. Every life he had been pulled back. And this time was no different. But something was. Joren felt it before he saw it. A presence behind him. A flicker of magic that did not belong to him. Slowly he turned. And there, standing in the doorway, holding a wand of his own, was his apprentice. Not the wide-eyed boy who had followed him like a shadow. Not the quiet student eager to learn the craft. No. The eyes that met his now were filled with something else entirely. Recognition. Joren's pulse pounded. His apprentice raised his wand, a twin to Joren's own. And suddenly Joren understood. This cycle, it had never been his alone. It had never been just about him. His apprentice smiled. It was not cruel, not kind, just knowing. We always do, the apprentice said softly. Joren's breath caught in his throat. He had spent lifetimes trying to destroy the wand. But what if he was never meant to? What if the cycle wasn't about ending something? What if it was about beginning something new? Aradan tilted his head, watching, waiting. The wand in Joren's hand pulsed. For the first time, it did not resist him. His apprentice stepped forward, his own wand thrumming with the same unseen force. "This time," the apprentice murmured, "we do not fail." And before Joren could respond, the world shattered. Darkness rushed forward, consuming the air, swallowing the library whole. The shelves cracked, the stones beneath them trembled, and in the heart of it all, the wand in Joren's hand finally awakened. A spark of power, a tether, not an end, a beginning. And as the world folded in on itself, as the cycle reached the moment it had always been leading to, Joren finally understood. This was not about breaking fate. This was about rewriting it,